Hi folks, welcome to Wednesday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast, videocast. Quick apology about yesterday. I'm afraid I wasn't feeling great yesterday, so I had to cancel the show. But we're here today. Today, obviously Wednesday, Prime Minister's questions. Nicola Sturgeon was back at the podium for our coronavirus press conference. And we've got an interview that Stuart did with Mike Stevenson?
Mike Stevenson.
Stevenson. Well, I'll let Stuart deal with that when the time comes. First off, we're going to do Nicola first, and then we're going to do PMQs. PMQs kind of runs into the interview content. So you watched Nicola's press conference today, Stuart. What did you think?
Well, to start with, we have the rather strange BBC intro. You know, they have about 2 minutes to introduce the show. Why don't they take 5 minutes and do it properly? Graham Stewart, who's just a regular, not the presenter, doesn't matter anyway. He's normally there just to give the main links for the TV show, BBC One Scotland. Andrew Kerr, who's got would appear to have part of Gordon Brewer's job. Don't like him, I'll be honest with you. He suddenly appeared and tried to usurp the First Minister by making the announcement about the weekly National Records of Scotland data, which was just weird. And he tried to put a slant on it. The usual BBC SNP bad slant. So it's worth.
How did he get a hold of it? I thought it wasn't published till.
No, it is always published just before. I think it's published at noon, so it's published just before the First Minister appears.
All right, sorry, I thought it wasn't published till 2 o'clock, which is why she doesn't give the figures.
Well, she normally gives the figures on a Wednesday. Anyway, so we had that strange. That was odd to start with. The First Minister was also, when she did appear, she was trying to shape the news. It was more good news about Pfizer vaccine, although she didn't tell us what that good news was.
Was it the Pfizer one or the other one that's 94%?
No, she definitely mentioned the Pfizer one, but we didn't get the detail on that. She was very excited to tell us all about some Public Health Scotland data about schools. The government took a lot of criticism about opening the schools, and it wasn't 100% support for opening schools, if you recall. And plus the other people, some people wanted them open earlier. Teachers didn't want them open at all. I mean, it was a bit complicated, but anyway, she gave us some details on that. I started to write down the data, and then I've got to get details, so I kind of ran out. But
well, you can really sum up the schools debate between whatever the Scottish government said there was opposition to, and the Scottish government held every position on the dial at some point. So,
the First Minister had a Deputy Chief Medical Officer. Still haven't got this guy's name properly. Is it Dave Seeger?
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds awfully like it. She had him there as support, and basically the data apparently supports everything the Scottish government said about it. So we'll find out over the next couple of days whether that's true or not. What else happened? We got announcements about the detail as a result of yesterday's levels difference. You know, the 11 Scottish councils going into level 4. Personally, we've got a bit of a problem here in Edinburgh because they've reduced Mid Lothian and East Lothian to level 2, left Edinburgh in level 3, which means we can't go into East Lothian or Mid Lothian unless we've got a good reason. But there you go. I did notice the guy from Border Television, as usual. Oh dear, he had a question about cross-border issues, Scotland to England.
Was he not complaining about the fact that Boris Johnson has closed the border between England and Scotland?
Well, it took Nicola Sturgeon to point that out to the idiot. What is his name? Tim Backshall. I've got him called a cheeky knut. So I think he was at it. I mean, the First Minister pointed out, and because she knows, she said there's there's an issue between Edinburgh and the Lothians. She said, let alone crossing the border to
So
England.
what was his thing, that Scotland had closed the border between?
No, he was just doing his usual border TV thing. Oh, I live in the borders. Is it going to be a problem crossing the border? Well, yes, it's a problem getting out of Edinburgh at the moment.
He
Stop
does
moaning.
realise England is in lockdown, and nobody should be travelling anywhere.
I don't think it matters to them down there. They're hyena hacks, and they're even worse than the Scottish ones because they're on the English border. However, that was that. What else? I didn't highlight much more. Yes, the defence from the Deputy Chief Medical Officer about the questions about the NRS figures was simply, yes, the schools are mirroring the communities they are in, and therefore they're not specifically spreading super spreaders. There were some questions about Christmas, which everybody wants to know about.
Well, can I just make a point about these statistics?
Uh-huh.
We all know the saying, statistics, damn statistics and lies. In the wash, months from now, we're going to discover that these statistics have proved basically nothing, because there is going to be no way to prove where you caught coronavirus, regardless of what the statistics say. It's going to be able to give you a likelihood that you caught it in blah, blah, blah in a pub. But there's every chance you caught it as you sat down on a park bench after you left the pub. So there's never going to be a way to prove where you caught it. So the statistics are actually only going to show broad pictures. I mean, they're going to show, for instance, that yes, at the time people were being decanted from hospital into care homes, and the coronavirus was going rampant. But it's not going to be able to say it was them that did it, because they're not going to be able to prove it wasn't staff members.
That doesn't matter to the hyena pack.
No, that's kind of the point I'm making. So the statistics are going to be of very little use, apart from overall figures and so on, how many coffins were used, etc. It just annoyed me last night. There was something on the telly about it, and I thought, when are these people ever going to grasp the reality that you just will never know where you caught the virus?
Well, we can do a special one day on the mainstream media in Scotland, and I think we should, because it's got no reflection of the society. We now live in a country where the majority of people consistently want Scotland to be independent, and yet you would never know it from the media.
What was it? Douglas Ross said something along the lines of, there's been a few polls recently. Yeah, 14. The last 14 polls.
Yes. They had Curtis. They had Professor John Curtis briefly on yesterday about that. We'll come to that. I think there's lots of shrapnel following the Prime Minister's confession. What else did the First Minister say? The Courier asked about the Christmas Day prediction. Nobody knows yet. No decision's been made, but First Minister, as usual, on her behavioural science platform, she said it's better to treat everyone as grown-ups. If the restrictions are too tight, people will just break the rules and get together anyway at Christmas. The thing to remember is, she says, wagging her finger, get the levels down before Christmas, and then it'll be okay.
That's the excuse.
Yeah, she even cracked a joke. She said, because she was asked about would there be Christmas bubbles, and she said, actually, for given it's Christmas, it'll be a bauble.
Oh, very good.
You missed that, did you?
I did, yeah.
At first, I thought it was something to do with a bobby, but no, it's a bauble.
A bobby as in a shilling.
Yes, but no, it turns out it was something to do with that bauble. Of course, you have baubles on the tree, don't you?
Yeah,
I don't.
of course you do.
Of course you do. I don't know if there's much else to say. Oh yes, what was it? Helen Puttock of the Times. God, I'm sure she's made a real mess of this before. So first of all, our sound wasn't right, and then she started asking questions about when would the restrictions be lifted from November the 11th and and November the 11th, shopping delays after November the 11th. Of course, what she meant to say was December the 11th. So she got scalped. There's nothing.
Well, I thought I did see that actually, and I thought the First Minister was very gentle with her.
She could have been nasty, couldn't she?
Yeah, she could have been a lot nastier. Yeah, I wasn't particularly impressed. Although, having said that, I was even less impressed with Boris today.
Prime Minister's questions.
Now, I think the first thing to say is Prime Minister's questions this week was Boris was in a virtual room somewhere in Downing Street, I presume. So you couldn't see what was off camera. You couldn't see anybody holding up boards with answers for him or anything like that. He certainly had a sheath of papers in front of him.
Or the teleprompter. Couldn't see that either.
No, couldn't see any of that. I thought he performed quite well on a purely presentational aspect, but he did what he always does. He just totally ignored the question, insisted on calling Serco test and trace, NHS test and trace. Didn't mention Dido Harding was now in self-isolation due to the app working and telling her to go home and go back to bed. But the faux pas of yesterday when he was speaking to his Red Wall Northern MPs, that's North of England, not Scottish, where he said that devolution had been a disaster, the biggest mistake that Tony Blair ever made. Now that's what he said. He didn't say anything about because the SNP got in power. He just said it was a disaster. And Ian Blackford today actually, I thought, had quite a good turn of phrase when he said that it wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a slip of the Tory mask, and showed what they really think of devolution. And I think applicable to Boris Johnson, I think it's definitely true. So I have a clip here that I'm going to show you of Douglas Ross, who's known affectionately to us as Dross, the recent leader of the Tories.
How much longer, eh?
The date on this clip is the 2nd of November, 2020, right? So it's 15 days ago. But I think you might find it quite interesting.
Okay.
Here we go. Here we go.
Which it has the resources and exposure to destroy the British.
Matt can't hear him.
And therefore, the only way to strengthen the
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Oh, let me start all this again. It's me continually reminding you
I know.
about the sound.
I'm always getting a row from my clip sounds.
Here we go.
One that has given the SNP a platform from which it has the resources and exposure to destroy the British state. And therefore, the only way to strengthen the Union is to abolish the Scottish Parliament and return to a pre-1999 situation or severely constrain its powers.
Now, that was basically 2 weeks ago.
Oh, the policy exchange, some think tank, no doubt.
Douglas Ross, leader of the Scottish Tories, suggesting the only way to deal with nationalism is to abolish Holyrood. That needs widely spread because it shows that the leader of the Scottish Tories agrees with his own leader of the British Tories that as far as the Tories are concerned, for their political position, it's been a disaster. Devolution has been a disaster.
Yes, but doesn't the qualification to be a Tory MP is simply to be good at lying?
I actually don't think that's a qualification. I don't think you need to be good at lying, because if they were good at lying, they wouldn't keep getting caught out.
All right. Well,
I think you just have to be prepared to tell lies.
I think they probably have to matriculate in lying and then graduate with hypocrisy and lying.
Well, I mean, the number of Tory MPs who were asked about this devolution was a disaster comment from Boris Johnson, who have said, no, what he actually meant was it was a disaster because the SNP got in power. And this has been the line. You know, oh, there's nothing wrong with devolution. It's the SNP being in power that makes devolution a bad idea. It's not what he said, but the number of MPs that have just barefaced lied about, yeah, that's what he said. And if he didn't actually say it, that's what he meant, because obviously they're all mind readers.
Oh, were these Tory MPs that stood up? I missed, of course.
Oh, the various ones that have been interviewed across.
Oh, I'm telling you. I mean, and they
they
still haven't got it. They have no idea how popular the Parliament is. I have to, Kenny, no, it was Alex Massey's article, which we could talk about in another day in depth, because he's a reasonable writer. He is the Scottish editor of The Spectator. And I don't agree with everything he's written in his article, but 3/4 of it is fairly accurate. But they don't get it in London at all. I mean, we've got Johnson, who said himself during Prime Minister's questions that devolution was good for London because he was in charge, but it's not good for Scotland because the SNP are in charge.
But that's the bottom line. The bottom line is devolution is only good if Tories are in charge of it.
And
it's no good. I mean, all this freedom and so on that people need.
And he's not. And of course, they're falling into the trap that Scottish Labour fallen into. There's nothing wrong with it. No, the problem is, the Tories will be saying, the problem is the Scottish electorate. We'll need to change the electorate. They're voting for their own.
I mean, and that's it. I mean, power should only be in the hands of Tories. That's the message. So the internal market bill is about moving power into the hands of the Tories. What, of course, Tories always forget is that at some point down the line, they're not going to be the ones controlling that power. And that is when everything changes.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen very often. They don't lose power very often in my lifetime.
Well, they haven't a lot, but one day it will be turned upon them.
And to be honest, as far as I'm concerned, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown squandered their time in office.
Well, you and I differ on this. They did a lot of good things that people forget about.
Can I just point out, because you don't agree with this, I felt that Boris was doubling down on his on his crime and his faux pas over devolution during the course of Prime Minister's question. But he did definitely fell out with the Speaker. The Speaker reprimanded him about calling them the Scottish Nationalist Party. And he doubled down on that when after he was reprimanded. He wasn't happy. He spoke back to the teacher.
Well, I think that we should refer to them as scum. Scottish Conservative and Unionist MPs.
Yes, they're all scum. Scottish Conservative and Unionist MPs, just in case we're being rude.
So that was the thrust of Keir Starmer's question, was about that faux pas. And then he went on to, this is PMQs we're back to now.
Right.
And then he went on to the fast tracking of Tories supporting applicants for money for PPE contracts.
Oh, that's a big issue as well.
Yeah, this is finally bubbled to the surface. Even Laura Kuenssberg mentioned it.
Oh, even.
So it appears that I can't remember what the outfit are called that have just had a wee inquiry into it. You were 10 times more likely to be given a contract if you had a connection to the Tory party.
No.
That's basically.
I'm sorry, I don't believe you.
Well, I actually love the excuse the Tories are coming up with because they were under so much pressure, and because they had to get the PPE quickly, they had to go to their pals and give them all this money to go and get it. They didn't go to people who had a track record. They went to their mates who they knew because they could trust them.
So they went to this guy who lives in Miami, and he's got jewelry shops in New York, LA, and Miami to buy PPE.
Well, no, that guy had nothing to do with the Tories. It was a Tory pal that went to that guy.
Oh, okay. So he presumably got a commission.
Well, 21 million is quite reasonable. I once imported memory sticks from China.
I once imported sealing wax from China.
Well, the memory sticks, I mean, we were talking 10,000 of them.
Did you?
Oh yeah. So
I didn't realize you bought that many.
Yeah, to sell on eBay. So the way it works is you find a company, you then contact a trusted agent who you pay to go along and check that the company can do what it says it can do. Same guy then goes back and tests the product they've made for you, oversees the packaging, basically makes sure they get on the boat, and then you pay him for his work. So that's what's involved in it, because you're not flying to China to check it yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So effectively, this guy got 21 million quid for being in China, apparently, and in a position, or at least having the contacts through the fact he got jewelry manufactured in China.
It's a good name.
To go and look at the PPE and make sure it's what they said it was.
I liked his name, Gabriel Anderson.
Well, I looked up what it cost me to employ this guy to look at the product I had manufactured in China, and it cost me £212.
Not 21 million.
£212 it cost me.
Yeah, but you weren't buying. What? How much is the contract to the jeweler?
It was
199 million or something.
It was £106 for each visit. So we made 2 visits. So it's, well, effectively, it was a millionth.
So did the memory sticks work?
Yeah, everything was fine. It all went very smoothly.
Oh, well.
And I was very happy with the work the guy did. Photographed everything, dismantled a couple of them, did it. So the work involved in this, and I mean, that's what this guy did, this agent does all the time. So there must be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these agents in China who work for a reasonable cost.
Shall we find out what shall we find out what my interviewee has got to say about blundering Boris, as Alex Mass said? Today my guest is Mike Stevenson of Thinktastic. I'll let Mike introduce himself here, I think, before we get into the meat. Hello there, Mike.
Hello.
So what is it how you describe yourself? I think you're an influential speaker, so you're probably an influencer, as they describe these days.
Yeah, well, I don't like being described as an influencer because you get caught up in the kind of Instagram celebrity stuff, and I'm certainly not that. But what I do is I speak. My mission really is to empower people in work and out of work, because most of us live our lives, you know, undercooked, and I think we need now more than ever people to join in the debate, people to, you know, help to direct their companies rather than just passively accept the direction of their organization. So I suppose I go out to inspire, motivate, empower, and reskill people.
Good. Well, you're the ideal man to speak to this morning. We've just had, of course, a wonderful support from Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister for Scottish independence, over the weekend. I have no idea why he's so keen, although there is, of course, a school of thought that thinks that a certain amount of Tories want rid of Scotland. What was your reaction to when you saw what Boris had to say to his northern MPs?
Well, I mean, clearly it wasn't meant for our ears. That's the first thing. But he's daft enough to think that saying something like that, which is pretty incendiary, would not get out. My first reaction was, oh, it's Boris. So nothing surprises me about Boris and his ability to say the wrong things at the wrong time. But my follow-up thought is that this is extraordinary, not only in terms of contributing to the Scottish independence movement, but also, I imagine, inflaming people in the north of England, because what he was effectively saying was, we want to keep decision-making central in Westminster. And, you know, if you thought Westminster was doing well, if you thought Westminster had any empathy for anything outside of London, then you might see his point. But it is so off the mark at the moment, and it lacks any kind of understanding of the world outside the world of Boris, which is an increasingly small world.
I'm just going to throw the red wall at you. It would appear there's going to be an awful lot of people in the north of England regretting their vote.
I think that's happened already, to be honest. And I imagine the 67 northern Tory MPs he was speaking to were urging him to do something about this perception that exists now in the north of England, which is growing, that Westminster has got absolutely no understanding of the plight. And if you look at the figures in the north of England, you know, in terms of poverty, in terms of the impact of COVID, it is astonishing now, the difference between the north and the south.
You know,
so I think they were looking for answers, and he didn't deliver what they were looking for.
One of the staggering statistics is the amount of money spent on transport in, say, the northeast of England per head compared to London. It's a factor of 10 times or something, isn't it? Where are they? Yes, and yet they seem to have no shame.
Yes, I mean the greatest devolutionary movement has been London, actually, and you know, London heavily subsidises its transport. It's been able to spend billions of pounds on infrastructure, and you know, at the expense of the rest of the country. Let's be honest. You know, if you were to do a calculation over the last 40 years, and I think most people have said this already, but you know, money that's been generated by the oil industry in the North Sea has funded not only much of the infrastructure, but the City of London, which now runs riot in terms of controlling the economy. Not for the benefit of the wider population.
It's famously the money laundering of the world. Well, look, what about focusing just for a moment on the Scottish situation?
Yeah,
I was saying in Easter time that almost every day on Twitter that the Tory MPs in Scotland, every time they commented on anything in Scotland about the SNP and the Scottish government, they were every day they were driving more people to independence, and it would look like. And now they're trying to turn around and say, "Oh, we weren't saying that."
Yeah,
Look at Douglas Ross. Do you think he'll get away with these excuses?
No, I don't. I mean, I think he's been dealt a serious blow by Boris Johnson. But you know, you criticise the Scottish government at the moment at your peril, only because we're in an extremely difficult time. And you know, Nicola Sturgeon, whatever you know people say about her, she's fronted it up. She's been consistent, and she's won admirers down south. And this is the extraordinary thing, that we have a Scottish leader who is respected down south more than Boris Johnson is. And that is an extraordinary outcome of all of this. So I think that the Tories in Scotland are you know, hammering at a door that just isn't going to open for them.
It's strange times, isn't it? You know, this attack, to attack devolution, it was absolutely, I think the word is suicidal.
Yeah.
I can remember only about 2 or 3 years ago, and there was a threat to devolution. I forget what the threat was. That was on the Thursday. By the Friday lunchtime, Holyrood Parliament was surrounded by about 2,000 or 3,000, nearly mostly older people who didn't have to be at work, holding hands. You just can't. they have no idea how popular the Parliament is. I mean, if somebody says if you want having your politician local, so you can really have that go at them makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is really central to the whole notion of democracy. And, you know, if your parliament is so remote and so bereft of any idea about the living circumstances that you find yourself in, then you've got a detachment that is just unbreachable. It's an unbreachable bridge between people in the north of England and Scotland and Northern Ireland and Westminster. So this idea that I mean, Boris would love to just get rid of the Scottish Parliament, which would be an absolute folly. I can't imagine that's what he wants to do, but I don't think he'd be able to do that in any circumstance.
I've seen it. Alec Massey, was it Alec Massey? The suggestion is, anyway, maybe it was Barhead Boy suggested that what did they really want to do is they won't shut it down because that would be too incendiary. But what they will do is just remove its powers, and so that it's got not parish council powers, as Tony Blair was apparently said, but the powers of an English county council.
Yes, that's what they want. I still don't think they'll get it because I think there'll be a huge reaction. And you just see the reaction to his statements yesterday. I mean, I think it provokes anger, but I imagine it provokes a lot of laughter as well, and a lot of delight on the faces of people who support Scottish independence. And, you know, there's no question that you want a government to understand the life that you lead. That's the first principle. Because if you don't, you cannot make the right decisions on any quarter at all. And I mean, I think the Scottish Parliament, I'd like to see it doing more. I'd like to see some of those really fundamental issues, you know, around poverty being taken on, you know, more imaginatively. But a Scottish Parliament is better than a Westminster Parliament for the people in Scotland. Absolutely slam dunk. There's no argument, you know, that anyone can put forward against that. The question then is about the economy. And, you know, the economy at the moment is characterized by fewer and fewer people getting more and more of a slice of the cake. And our economy is based on, you know, property. It's all about property. So we're not actually producing anything, and we're not contributing to the world at the moment. We are, you know, an economy based on property and pension funds.
Yes,
and that's not good to anyone.
And a property bubble, in particular in the London area, of course.
Yes.
Well, it's Boris has done the Scottish independence movement a great deal of good, and I'd no doubt whatever Boris said there at the weekend, whether what was reported was true or not, it'll be thrown back in Douglas Ross's face for the next 6 months.
Yeah, I think he said it because there's been no denial. All we've had is a reinterpretation of the words. Because what he meant to say was, it's not the Scottish Parliament which is in a disaster, because we, the government, as you can see on our website, if you look at the UK government's website, it talks very highly about the Scottish Parliament as being, you know, the will of the Scottish people being expressed and all the rest of it. No, I think Douglas Ross must have fallen out of bed yesterday morning because you cannot damage the Scottish Tories anymore, and you cannot reinterpret the words to mean something else. He said it, and he's not a man that doesn't choose as well. He's ill-advised in the words he chooses, but he does choose them nonetheless.
Boris Johnson definitely said that the Scottish Parliament, Scottish devolution has been a disaster. Yes, it's been a disaster for Westminster. Yeah. It's been a disaster for Westminster.
It's a disaster for him, and it's a disaster for his party down in Westminster, they are the most blinkered group of people. Because, you know, I might agree with the principle that a union of countries is better working together, but my union of countries would be the European Union. Now,
Yeah.
and there's a tipping point, you know, and the UK Union is almost, you know, is overshooting itself, because it is now, it serves no real purpose out of Europe. And, you know, I want to be part of a nation that's contributing to the wider world intellectually, philosophically, and economically. And, you know, with Britain, we're not doing that at the moment.
No, well, thank you very much, Mike. I'm sure I'd be keen to have you back again on another topic. So thank you very much for
Anytime,
contributing
Stuart.
today.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, and thank you very much.
Wow, finally got there. Was worth the wait, I hope.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. As I told you, I do need to rehearse things.
Aye, it's a long time since I've seen Mike. In fact, I think he still had hair the last time I saw him.
He doesn't look his age, I'll tell you that much.
No. And his mind's obviously quite sharp.
Oh,
Well, I think maybe we'll finish on that, will we?
yes, we can. Loads we can talk about, but we've got too much to talk about, and we're running up against our normal 3/4 of an hour.
Okay. Well, my personal thanks to Mike Stevenson there. That was
Yes, thanks, Mike.
very interesting interview. Well done, Stuart. And thanks for listening and watching, folks. Sorry it took us a while to get that up, but we're old. We're old.
Yes, we'll rehearse it again tomorrow.
You've got to forgive us.
Yeah, you'll rehearse it again.
I will catch you tomorrow, hopefully. Cheers for now.